Hi, I'm Mark Galeotti, author of the book The Vory, Russia's Super Mafia from Yale University Press, which is coming out in April 2018 in the UK and May 2018 in the United States, but is already available for pre-order if you're watching before then. And I want to give you 3 reasons as to why I would particularly hope you'll buy this book. The first is actually the breadth. Now, I've been working on this book in a way for 30 years. Now that makes me sound like a very, very slow writer, but in fact it's because this is a complex topic and one that I've been researching for a long time in country, in Russia, as well as elsewhere. And what I'm particularly proud of is precisely that this places it within a grand historical perspective. Although obviously the evidence is much, much more lacking when we go further back, but in some ways, this roots it in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, and follows a historical sweep. It's half a history book about how Russian organised crime emerged, and particularly the culture of the so-called Vory. The word means thieves in Russian, but it actually is the term for the sort of hardcore criminal caste, that particularly was a feature of Stalin's Gulag labour camps and has emerged since then. But also how that has evolved into the present day, and I'll talk about this more in a moment, but about a third to a half of the book is very much looking at the here and now. So I'm very pleased with the grand historical breadth. Secondly is the range of sources and evidence on which I've drawn. Now obviously I've been using the best scholarship around, some of which is very good indeed, both in the West and in Russia. But beyond that I've dug into newspapers, national and provincial and so forth, but I've also actually have a certain lived experience. This is a topic on which I worked on. I have been a consultant for various law enforcement agencies and governments, and I have talked to police officers in Russia and elsewhere. I've also talked to criminals in Russia and elsewhere. And therefore, I think one of the things that makes this book both interesting but also accessible, it's designed to be something that is interesting for a general reader, is exactly the fact that it draws on a whole variety of hitherto unknown voices to talk about how organised crime evolved, its relationship to society and the state, and also a whole bunch of episodes and vignettes that frankly haven't really sort of come out yet. How the Russian Revolution could have actually gone in a totally different way if just one particular gangster had known who Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks, was. How the Stalinist state actually ended up co-opting the gangsters. That's a story that we've heard in Gulag memoirs and studies about the labour camps and so forth. But what's also interesting is how other regimes at other times also, on the one hand, policed the criminals, but on the other hand, found them quite useful. And I think this leads to the third main point, which is that this is also a book that I think illuminates a lot about modern Russia. Now, sometimes we get this quite sort of loose characterization of Russia as a mafia state, which I don't actually buy. I think that's too simplistic. But nonetheless, it is clear that there is a terrifyingly close connection between the worlds of politics, of business, and of crime. And so much so that therefore I think this does help explain not just how the Putin regime emerged. One of the stories I have in the book is precisely about how Putin began to house-train the Mafia in a way after his arrival in power in 2000, not defeating them so much as giving them a new set of rules of behaviour. But this also is going to be about how Russia will evolve after Putin. Because Putin is likely in his last presidential term coming up. He's standing for election in March 2018. Of course, he'll win. But we already are having to think about, well, what will Russia be like after Putin? And the question of organised crime is going to be absolutely central of that. Because after all, the gangsters are involved in politics, the gangsters are involved absolutely sort of intimately in the apparently legitimate economic sector. But beyond that, again, we once again have the gangsters being used as agents of the state in Putin's shadow political war against the West. Increasingly, we're seeing Russian-based organised crime being mobilised as a tool of Russian geopolitics. So for all of these reasons, this is, if not a mafia state, a country which in some ways has nationalised its mafia. And therefore, alas, the gangsters, even if they're now looking very different, They're no longer covered in tattoos the way we've seen in films and so forth. They're wearing sharp suits. They are apparently often businessmen with other sectors. They are endowing charities and, when they can, traveling abroad. But nonetheless, the gangsters are still going to have an absolutely crucial role to play in Russia's future, but also in Russia's relationship with the rest of the world. This is all the sort of material that I cover in my book. I do hope you'll buy it, I do hope you'll read it, and above all, I do hope you'll enjoy it and find it interesting. As I say, it's coming out from Yale University Press in April in the UK, in May in the United States, and there are already contracts for various translated versions to be appearing thereafter. Thank you very much.